Well, hello there, and welcome to another edition of Warbird Wednesday. My name is Fred Bell. I am the Vice Chairman of the Palm Springs Air Museum, and today, with my front door assistant, front door, that's I like that word. We got to figure out how to use that more often, Greg. I don't know why. We're going to continue down Big Airplane Lane, or as Greg has coiffed me. You know, I put this thing on, like, I don't see these before I get them, and there were numerous people that laughed. Here, I'll give you the side view, that gave it quite a hearty ho-ho, but clearly we're talking about the big airplanes, the whales. So Greg has done that. This one, I thought it kind of made me look like Alien, actually, but there we go. Nice toss to the Kenny. All right, so we're talking about the C-133, the Cargomaster, a Douglas aircraft. We'll throw it up. Greg can throw a plan view up. Now, kind of a funny looking airplane. You remember I said the other airplane last week kind of looked like Bullwinkle? This isn't too far off of that, but these are, remember, purpose-built aircraft at the time. The United States was in the middle of the Cold War, and they needed heavy lift. They did not have heavy lift. Now, the interesting thing about the C-133 is that this aircraft had no prototype. It went from design to construction. There was no prototype. They didn't test it. They basically, the Air Force gave them a logistical requirement for the Logistic Carrier Support System. That's what they called it. And for the Military Air Transport Service, they built these. This is a very low build rate aircraft. There were only 50 built between 1956 and 1961. The cargo area on this was 90 feet long, and it was a rear loader. It was 12 feet high. They did have some side loading areas on the aircraft, completely different in that the 124 that we talked about last week, this aircraft was pressurized. It had a climate control in it, and you know, you're running these turboprops, which means it was very fast. This is not very fast, but faster for a cargo airplane. It had these blisters on the outside for the landing gear, so you had kind of a clean cargo area. What it didn't have was it didn't have decked cargo. So it was basically one deck all the way through, and we'll talk about why. But it didn't have an elevator inside, and at least that I know of. And so it had that rear loading. You'd load in whatever you loaded in, and you were pretty much done. The aircraft initially set a number of unofficial and official speed records. It was very, very fast. So transit records, it said transit records and unofficial transit records right when it came in. Not only did it set records, but it also, and we're going to talk about this, even though you don't want to talk about it. By the way, with the 124 last week, I got people that were upset that it was underpowered and so on and so forth. This aircraft, for the build rate, had a very high mishap rate that we'll talk about, like we did with the last airplane at the end of the video. But I want to, again, to repeat the context of this aircraft. The context of the airplane is that the United States came out of World War II, and they were now a superpower, and they had no heavy lift capacity whatsoever. They did have some Douglas airplanes, but they didn't have anything that was in the scope of these two heavy or super heavy cargo lifters. And so they were in a rush, just like they're in a rush and everything else. And we've gone back and talked about, like, if you go back to the segment on the B-36, for example, I'm not sure exactly how much money they spent on development but in adjusted dollars, it was like $7 billion. The numbers were just ridiculous. At that time, they were basically arming, because they thought they were going to have to fight a Cold War with the Russians, and so they were rushing to get these aircraft into production and get them to where they would be productive citizens, so to speak. And that took a great deal of effort. It took a lot of money. I don't know, I couldn't find the total program expenditure on this, but this thing wasn't cheap on such a low build that it was. There were 2 of these aircraft, and Greg, this is something that I thought was interesting. There were 2 aircraft without tail numbers that were kept in Long Beach as test and evaluation airplanes. If you know in the comment section, I'd be really curious as to what happened to them. Again, this was a victim of the C-5 being brought in. It wasn't really a victim by that time. This airplane was worn out. I mean, they ran it as hard as they could, and the aircraft was retired when the C-5A was brought into service. So basically, when that happened, the C-5 came in. Any heavy lift aircraft that were in this segment went away, and they were really rode hard. They were tired, and we're going to talk about the loss rate as to some of the reasons why they were justifiably retired. So a salute today, and I'm going to do a left field salute, and that is that this aircraft, when it was designed, its design was locked in place in the middle 1950s. Now, the interesting thing about it was there are some people, and these are the folks who are going to salute today, that think that this aircraft was designed, and I could see the argument, to carry the ICBMs. Because one of the things that it was better to air transport ICBMs at that time because it was quicker. Think about the small build rate, so on and so forth, and they could fit in here. The Titans and the early ICBMs could fit in here. So I looked around quite a bit to try to find out if there was any early correlation, because remember, the airplane was rushed into production. There was no prototype. Whether there was a correlation between the ICBMs and this airplane, and were they specifically designed for that, especially in the logistics thing that the Air Force put out with the design spec, and I couldn't find anything. But I would not put it past the United States at this point, because they froze the design in place. You think about when the Atlas and the Titan program was coming in, which you had that other portion of the nuclear triad, I could absolutely believe that this aircraft was rushed into service. For one of the reasons it was rushed into service was to move around those missiles. Because remember, we were hustling at that time to get the nuclear triad up, the submarines, land-based and air-based, and there's no question that those Titans and the Atlas rockets were very important at that time. So who I am going to salute today, I'm going to work them in, Greg, is the Atlas and the Titan rocket crews. The nuclear triad has kept the peace, and I've talked about this before, ever since the end of World War II, and although we have some reckless talk right now by the Russians about the use of nukes, the reality of the situation is nuclear weapons have not been used because the United States has kept in place, one of the reasons, a overwhelming force of nuclear weapons. So if you were a crew, a missileer, the one thing that we all owe you is a debt of thanks. And most of those folks soldiered in those bunkers and soldiered on and never really got any recognition. But what a miserable job that was, and you never knew when the end of the world was going to come, and both those guys or girls were going to have to turn that key in that silo and launch that ICBM. So if you are a missileer or a nuclear triad supporter, so to speak, one of those folks in one of the bunkers, I salute you. And today, Greg has gone with Billy's Bubble Pop. This is kind of scary. I could have drawn that logo. There's nothing on the logo. This is grape made with real sugar, not pure cane sugar. These guys didn't get the memo. So let's see. Ooh, this is scary. There's no Cal Redemption on this one. Oh boy, this could be bad. It looks like there's no fizz in there either, the way I'm moving it around. 180 calories, maybe 10 spoons of botulism. You never know with Greg working on it. So we will pop the top, and yeah, there's no fizz. That one is dead. Thanks, Greg. Here we go. You know that. Look at Greg is shrugging his shoulders. Yeah, I take one for the team. Well, it doesn't smell bad. Let's see. Ooh. Not drinkable. I mean, it's flat. It's gone. It's totally gone. There's nothing in it. But second sip, tall poison control. Here we go. I'm going to tempt fate. So if you were a missileer, these may be my last words, by the way, after I take the second sip. If you were a missileer or you were involved in one of those ICBM programs, I salute you. Oh man, that is deader than dead. I don't know where you got that one, but it is cooked off, so to speak. So these folks did, in these aircraft, they moved a ton of cargo. The ICBMs, as we talked about, they also moved the Apollo spacecraft after they returned. These aircraft were involved in moving some of the capsules. Now, let's talk about the fun part or the ugly part of the airplane. The aircraft had about just under a 20% loss rate. So it was fairly high for such a small build. One of the problems was stress corrosion, which they found in the airframe. They used them so much and they vibrated so much that they would have corrosion in here, and basically the aluminum would just snap. They had a problem with the auto pitch controller on the airplane, which on the pitch on the props could affect the pitch on the props, which could cause the loss of the airplane. They had a scary stall problem in that the left wing would stall before the right, like this. So the airplane would essentially go into a spin. It would stall. So not only have you stalled, but now the airplane has pitched over on you. So that was and imagine an airplane this big doing that. That's not fun. And lastly, the airplane got used so much that the back of the airplane snapped off at one point, and they had to come in and put a aluminum band or a stress band to hold the back of the airplane on because they used them that much. The airframe had a 10,000 hour rating. They did a SLEP, a service life expectancy program, or they were extending the life of them. They extended them out to 19,000 hours. So they increased the airframe use by almost 100%. But by the time they landed them and put them away, they were scrapped. And they were literally, when they went to AMARC, they were gone within a couple of years. They scrapped every last one of them. I could not find what happened to the two at Long Beach, which I was really, because those were essentially test and evaluation airplanes. And I'm surprised when Long Beach went away, as I said, we tried to save the control tower. If there'd been anything of these airplanes left, we probably would have gone over and tried to save the tiny bits of the cockpit or something. But I don't know what happened to them. If you know, in the comment section, I'd be interested. But this was one of these airplanes that was a soldier. It did its job. It went out and did what it was supposed to do. And when it was done, it was completely consumed in the process of what it was done. But there is no question that the United States really benefited from this particular airframe, especially in Vietnam. If you want to look at where these airplanes were invaluable in moving cargo fast, it was Vietnam. And like these aircraft, American aircraft carriers, when they were turned around for Vietnam quickly, especially those distillate carriers, not the non-nuke carriers, conventionally powered carriers, they had the same problem in that they were just beat to death. So a lot of equipment, because we were turning it so fast, was really torn up in that conflict. I think And this has nothing to do particularly with this airplane, but if you were to look at the Iraq War and Afghanistan, you're going to find that a lot of airframes were chewed up in quick turnarounds like that as well. They only have, these aircraft, we talked about it before, they only have so much of a life expectancy, and once you use that up, they won't work anymore. They're not designed to do that. So to the C-133, to the Cargomaster, I think we got great bang for the buck, and when it was done, it was time to go to pasture. So let's move on. Now, if you, look at this. This is the coolest thing on the planet. You know, when I was kids, I would like draw in, or was a kid, I would draw in, you know, the little men and on the airplanes and fly them and get in trouble and stuff like that. But if you want to make paper airplanes that fly, Greg does this all the time. I have to stop him from doing that. He steals these. He makes them in his office. He throws them with his feet. It's not fun. You can click on the link. There are 18 fold and fly airplanes in here. That's pretty cool. So click on the link, and Jason will happily have one of these fly. Oh, pretty good, Greg. Fly to you, and we'll send that to you. If you come across us on YouTube, all we do are long form aircraft videos. If you can get past, I always say, the aftertaste on that soda is just absolutely diabolical. If you can get past the nasty soda or the headdress, all we do are long form aircraft, military aircraft videos. We are going against the grain. Greg, everything now is more of these kind of TikTok, like 2-minute video things where maybe we light you on fire or something, I don't know. But if you like long form military aircraft videos, well, that's what we do. If you know somebody that likes that, forward it to them. Forward the video to them. Maybe they will enjoy that. If you come across us on Facebook, give us a like and a comment. We can use a like and a comment on YouTube as well. And on YouTube, give us a subscription if you want to do that. We would greatly appreciate it. And if you look down in that link, you're going to find a teacher's guide. And then you're also going to find an area to donate. If you want to donate to us, we would love that. That's how we do all this stuff here at the museum. We can't make it work without your dollars that you send us, and we really appreciate that. Happy New Year. It's a new year. We hope you are having a good new year. My name is Fred Bell. I am the Vice Chairman of the Palm Springs Air Museum. Have a great day.